The Midwest and Northeast could be in for a significant snowstorm on the weekend of January 13th once a powerful low pressure system coming ashore along the California coast moves into the midsection of the country, where we could see just enough instability for a significant snowstorm to develop right around the Midwest and Northeast. If we were to take a look at the latest depiction of the GFS model, we do see that a large portion of Northeast experiences very heavy snowfall from this. Even the more populated areas such as Washington, D.C., New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, all get involved with heavy snowfall from this snowstorm. So this snowstorm, based on the latest depiction of the GFS model, wouldn't only exclusively impact the interior Northeast, as some of the major cities and the big population centers get impacted. And this even includes the Midwest, where we see Chicago, Detroit, and a large portion of Illinois and Missouri get involved with heavy snowfall as well. So if we were to go all the way back to start with the latest GFS model forecast run, we do see that there will be a small clipper system that moves through the Northeast by the time we approach the midweek, and that should set the stage for the cold air to be locked in place right around the northern portion of the United States. And depending on how far south this ridge moves, because the further south this ridge moves, the stronger the northerly winds will be throughout the northern portion of the United States, for the cold air to be forced further southward, for the cold air to be locked in place by the time this low pressure system moves eastward into the Northeast. If we were to take a look at what the GFS model is forecasting with this low pressure system as it moves ashore along the California coast, we do see very heavy snowfall in the higher elevations of California, where, of course, in the higher elevations of the West Coast, you could experience feet of snow, not inches, but feet of snow, and very heavy rain along the immediate coast of California. But this low pressure system is also quite powerful, and it's going to have a decent level of cold air behind it to create an unstable environment as it continues to move further eastward, where there's going to be just enough of a southerly flow to force that very warm, moist Gulf of Mexico air mass further northward, and there's just going to be enough cold Arctic air just so west of this low pressure system for some convection to occur as this continues to move further eastward. And of course, since the cold air is locked in place based on the latest depiction of the GFS model, we're going to see an even more enhanced probability of instability as this moves eastward towards the Northeast. And depending on the latitude at which this low pressure system approaches the Northeast and the Midwest, that will determine who will get the heaviest snowfall. I will say with certainty that this storm is likely to develop and bring significant snow at least somewhere in the United States. It could be the extreme interior portions of the Northeast, but it's pretty much certain at this point we will see a significant storm approach the eastern half of the United States by the weekend of January 13th. What is a big question, the big question that remains, is how much cold air will be locked in place to really determine who will get the heaviest snowfall in the latest depiction of the GFS model run. Of course, we see New York City, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. get involved with snowfall, and of course the interior Northeast would experience the most snowfall, as eventually the GFS model still expects the snow to change over to rain in the major cities such as New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, Washington, D.C. They all eventually change over to rain, while the interior Northeast, it's primarily a snow event. But we're still seeing very heavy snowfall, despite the fact that eventually the GFS model does expect this the snowfall to change over to rain in the bigger cities. So, and we of course see that heavy snowfall even further westward, where Chicago and Detroit get involved with very heavy snowfall as well. And there's just enough instability to keep this storm going as it approaches the Northeast, and we could potentially see gusty winds as well associated with this low pressure system. So what will really determine if we'll see who will receive the heavy snowfall is how far south this ridge will build, because the further south this builds, the stronger pressure gradient we'll see, which will allow the cool air mass that's located further northward to move southward as a result of a strong northerly flow that this ridge would bring to the northern portion of the United States to bring that cold air further southward. So we're going to need to pay very close attention to the position of this ridge, and the position of the ridge will be determined by really the next by how strong the northerly wind winds will be over the next several days. So keep that in mind if you want to pay attention to how much cold air will be locked in place by the weekend of January 13th. I will say that the areas that, of course, will have the highest probability of experiencing heavy snowfall will be the interior northeast, while the coastal northeast cities, it's still a little bit more uncertain, and this could easily be a rain event for much of the Interstate 95 corridor cities, but it's at least something to keep in mind, especially since a computer model as reliable as the GFS model wants to bring a heavy amount of snowfall pretty much throughout the entirety of the Northeast and a pretty big portion of the Midwest as well. So make sure to pay very close attention to that in terms of the snowfall forecast the GFS model is predicting. We clearly see that much of the Northeast, pretty much the entirety of the Northeast, experiences snowfall in some way, shape, or form, especially the interior Northeast, where the interior Northeast experiences the most snowfall, where we see a large area of 6 to 12 inches of snow and over a foot of snow in the more northern portions of the Northeast. And we see the 6 to 12 inch range extend even as far west as Chicago, Detroit, and a large portion of Iowa and Missouri also get involved with very heavy snowfall. So if the GFS current forecast model run was completely correct, this is the amount of snow you would expect throughout the eastern half of the United States, and this of course will be considered a significant snowstorm. So it's at least something to be aware of. Still highly uncertain. We're going to need to see how much cold air is locked in place, but I'll keep you guys updated as the certainty does change over the next several days with the forecast. The European model's depiction of the forecast, however, tells a very different story, where the European model wants to bring primarily a rain event for much of the United States. While it does agree that we're going to see a very similarly strength storm system move into the eastern half of the United States, it does not agree with how much cold air will be locked in place in the northern United States, because we clearly see that outside of the northernmost portions of Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont, it's entirely a rain event for much of the eastern half of the United States. So there's still a high amount of uncertainty, thanks in part to the fact that both of the two main computer models are in pretty big disagreements of where that rain snow line will be located. So we're going to need to pay very close attention to how the computer models change their forecast over the next several days. See which one eventually caves into mimicking the other, because that's when we really begin to see the certainty rise with the forecast. But I'll keep you guys updated, but we clearly see the European model, while it does expect a similar trajectory and a similar strength for this storm system as it moves further eastward, the snow is a lot further northward, so that definitely does raise the uncertainty with the forecast. So we're gonna need to pay very close attention over the next several days, and I'll keep you guys updated to see which scenario will be the more correct one. But just at least be aware that that snow is likely somewhere in the United States. It could be the extreme interior portions of the Northeast, or it could be a little bit further southward. We're just going to need to wait and see whether the GFS model or the European model will be the more correct scenario, as I'll keep you guys updated. Take a look at what the European model is forecasting when it comes to total snowfall accumulation over the next week as the storm system moves eastward. We see that the European model is expecting very little snowfall for much of the United States. We do see a little bit of snowfall in the extreme northern portions of Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, but that's about it. We see a little bit of snow as well in Michigan and northern portion of Ohio, but this is far from a major or widespread snow event for the eastern half of the United States. So we're gonna need to wait and see how much cold air will be locked in place and how far south that ridge will be to determine if the GFS model will be correct or the European model. So here's the current forecast regarding this next potential snowstorm. So there's that possibility of major snow in the areas shaded in pink and even the light blue. So make sure to pay close attention. It's still far from a certain forecast. I will say that a significant storm system will at least move into the eastern half of the United States on the weekend between January 13th and the 15th. But we're going to need to wait and see where exactly the heaviest snow will fall. And make sure, guys, to subscribe if you want to see even more weather-related content. And thank you guys for watching.